This meeting is. Joseph has joined the meeting. Angel Moore has joined the meeting.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm going to ask everyone who is not a panelist to please mute yourself. So before we get started with our very informative panel tonight, I want to again welcome everyone and give you a little bit of a backstory. Christy Rogers, my cousin, and I started Pieces of Me Foundation in 2019 to really bring the disability community together and to raise the level of consciousness, the level of awareness by partnering amongst ourselves and with allies so that we could elevate the conversation.
Good. Super excited because we did.
So again, if everyone could mute themselves, please.
Okay.
So we started this program in January where we're having monthly webinars to
Host attendee-Zoom. Link graphic Zoom logo. Page has 1 region and 11 links. Host.
Ken, can you mute yourself? We can hear
really
Jaws.
Raise the level, some of the unique issues that we. All right, thank you. So we started this series of conversations in January. We're doing once a month that we are bringing people together, those with disabilities, those who do not identify as having disabilities, so that we can talk about the unique issues that we face and propose unique and innovative solutions. And we also have been bringing together things like our new Facebook community group that we are encouraging everyone to join so that we can continue these conversations that I'll mention more at the end of this call as well. For those of you who are new to us, I encourage you to check out our website, piecesofme.org. Of course, we spell that P-E-A-C-E-S to me.org, where you have principles which are integral to everything we do. You can learn more about how to support us. And I promise, no matter what your circumstances are, there is something you can do of value to move this mission forward if what we do resonates with you, and we certainly hope it does. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Charlene, who is going to introduce our panelists, as well as Gary, who is our board member, our friend. It's an incredible valuable member of our team to conduct this panel tonight. So Charlene is an advocate for the blind. She's very passionate and very talented. I'm grateful to have her in our orbit by virtue of her work with Vanward Consulting. And I will turn it over to you to take it from here.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And you are exactly right. I'm very passionate about the work that I do. It is really great to be a part of this. As Daniel said, my name is Charlene Gordon, and I will be facilitating this evening. I have a few, Kashona, can you please put yourself on mute so that we don't catch your background noise? So before we get started, I do want to introduce you to the person at Vanward that we call the eye in the sky. That's Jerry Tanner. Jerry, can you just kind of peep in real quickly and say hellos?
Okay, look right there where thing is. You see our harness?
Okay, I think she'll open up her mic soon, but we have one more. There we go.
Here.
Okay, hi.
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Okay. Jerry will be controlling the Zoom link. And Jerry, can you put Kashona Graham on mute? We can hear her background noise and it's interfering. Jerry is going to be the person that when you put a question in the chat room, then Jerry is going to be able to address those questions. You all have been fantastic when you registered. You sent in some very good questions that we're going to have the panelists address. So before I introduce the panelists, I want to throw out some statistics and to set the mood for the evening. Again, this is focused on solutions. This is, the panelists will each be talking about their struggles and their successes, but they're also going to really lay out how they made things happen and how they got to the top of their game. It is about the challenges in networking that they went through and how they mapped out their plan to achieve their goals. Let me give you some statistics, and then I will introduce you to the panelists. The previous statistics from the 1990s stated that 70% of individuals who are blind and visually impaired are unemployed. 70% are unemployed. But there's a more recent statistics that cited in the Journal of Blindness and Visual Impairments from 2019 that says, and this is statistics that was done by research by Dr. McDonald and Dr. Zua, says that they found that 50%, some 50.9% of the people who are blind and visually impaired have just totally left the marketplace. They're no longer even looking for jobs. That's a concern to us. Now, while they state that there's 44% who are employed, they don't state whether or not they're full-time employed or part-time employed. But when we look a little further in the Journal of Blindness, Innovation, and Technology, Dr. Bell and Dr. Silverman went into a little more depth. They took a sample size of 1,153 people, and they found that 42% were employed. That's 32 were full-time employed, and 10% were self-employed, which was again very interesting, because what's going on with the rest of the population is what we're talking about. Now, when you bounce that against the total population, the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics reports that the labor force participation in the general population shows that about 62% of the people as of February 2022 are employed. So that kind of tells you where we are in this population. Now, what's really interesting is that it's a new game, and the playing field is leveling out. Because when you look at jobs for people who are blind and visually impaired, and on the application, there's that statement, do you have a driver's license? Well, right now, Pew Research Survey as of January 2021 states that 2/3 of the workforce have the majority of their job responsibilities through virtual work. That's banking, finance, accounting, insurance, and information and technology. Now that levels the playing field, which is why it's a great time to have this conversation. So with that, if you have some questions and you want to get some input, remember this is about you, the audience, as the panelists tell their story. I want to introduce you to the panelists. I'm going to start out just asking the panelists to, one, tell us who you are, tell us what your visual impairment is, and then tell us what you do. And then after that, after each of you introduce yourselves, then we'll get into more depth about your visual loss experience. So, Mr. McPherson, Mr. Robert Bob McPherson, I want to start out with you. Tell us who you are and what you do and what your visual loss is. Bob, can you unmute? Great.
My name is Bob McPherson. I lost my sight 7 years ago, a diabetic retinopathy. I run a home healthcare industry in the Detroit area. And my most recent project is I've started a virtual online fitness business. And that's it for me.
Charlene, you're on mute now.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. I'm going to now ask Gary, can you please tell us the same 3 questions? You're on mute. You're still on mute, Gary. There we
Okay,
go.
is that better?
Yep,
Okay, I'm
that's
sorry,
it.
everyone. Good evening. My name is Gary Horton. I am the president of Vanward Consulting Services. I have a congenital condition. I've been low vision most of my life, but I lost my vision completely about 5 years ago. Vanward Consulting Services does staffing on the private sector side, and on the public sector side, we do program development. We work very closely with the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons to do training for blind individuals of all age groups.
Thanks, Gary. Bill, can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Charlene. Bill Robinson with the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons. I'm just honored and to be invited to be here tonight. What I am in charge of is the services for the blind through the state of Michigan for all of Michigan. We have 7 offices across the state and also a Braille Talking Book Library, a training center, and a business enterprise program that we manage.
Thank you, Bill. It's really going to be great to hear all
Well,
three of your
Charlene, he
stories.
didn't talk about his visual impairment.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, I need
you're
to say
right,
that.
Bill.
I have no vision in my left eye, and in my right eye, I have a field cut due to some muscular issues in that eyelid. And then I also have a corneal scarring across that eye as well.
Thank you, Bill. So now we want to dive into how the lights went out, what happened, and how it impacted your life. So I'm going to open up the floor, and whomever would like to go first, go ahead and step in.
I'll go first. We can keep the same sequence. So the light went out on me 7 years ago, and because of diabetes, and I was committed not to live as a blind person. So I was using my considerable resources to ignore the fact that I was blind. And so my family members, I have a wonderful family, a support system. They decided that I really needed some help. So I was familiar with the Michigan rehabilitation services, because as a medical provider, we worked with the physically challenge with power wheelchairs, scooters, and that kind of thing. Well, my family registered me, and I got associated with Charlene. And not only did Charlene convince me that blindness wasn't the end of the world, it was just the end of my sighted world. And I needed to accept the support and the education to continue my what everyone in America would say had been a very successful journey, to continue that journey in the dark. And with her help, I met Gary Horton, and we started just talking about challenges with blindness, and that, and ways that we could see to help other people. The one person helped the most was me. So the white cane helped give me independence. Programs like Charlene introduced me to a computer person. He's no longer with us, who was phenomenal. And he introduced me to the power of JAWS, which I don't use that often, but also of the power of the iPhone and the Siri. Now that's a godsend. Everyone should run out and get them an iPhone. And so that has afforded me the opportunity to be more independent with my business.
Thanks, Bob. Gary?
Yeah, and I didn't say this before, but I have to say this. Both the gentlemen on this call that's doing this for Pieces of Me, I really, really appreciate it greatly. For me, you know, back in 1970, a doctor in the office told me and my mom that, hey, let me call a couple other doctors in because this kid, look at these glasses, look at his vision. And they just flatly told me in the room that probably before you're 60, young man, you're going to be totally blind. That was a lot for an 11-year-old to take in, but I would say that it did put me on a path, or at very least, when I did get to my 50s and it actually happened, I would say that, you know, it was just a matter of time that it was going to happen. The clock was always ticking, but it really happened in the spring of 2017. I just stopped being able to see as clearly. I mean, vision goes in and out very, very gradually. I remember one day walking in Chattanooga, Tennessee, walking down the street, and I was just kind of testing my eyes. I would close the left eye, then close the right eye. As I'm doing this little test, I close my right eye, and I literally at full gait walk into a car, flip completely over the hood. That's when I knew that, okay, I'm going to be blind. So I then immediately tried to use every technology tool, every gimmick, every drug, every doctor that I possibly could for about 1.5 to 2 years, until I came to the conclusion in 2017 that, okay, this is going to be the deal. What do I do now? As with Bob, I do have a strong support system. My wife is in the medical profession. She was there to help me. And the same individual that Bob is talking about, Kareem Hopkins, was a blessing to me after I lost my vision. He was young, he was aggressive, he was in his 30s, he did everything. He was doing home improvements, he was buying houses. And it really opened my eyes on the possibilities of what you could do. And that was really spurred me on significantly. Another person, I had a very close friend of mine that I've known for a number of years who stuck by me during that time. She was going through chronic pain. She is no longer with us, just like Kareem is no longer with us. I really wish they could be here today to see me and Bob on a Zoom meeting, kicking it live with all of you guys tonight. The bottom line is, events happen in your life. They happen to everybody. They happen to me, they happen to everybody else. Everybody has a disability of some sort. Mine happens to be vision, but nothing changes the soul, nothing changes your desire to achieve. And that's really what you, like Bob said, he said it so eloquently. The person that fixes it is me or you. It's always going to come back down to that.
Thanks, Gary. Bill?
And this is Bill Robinson speaking. My event happened all at once. I was in South Georgia. I was hunting quail with a friend of mine that was a new hunter. He had only one shotgun, which was one of those big ones with big shotgun shells and big shot that was not appropriate for what we were doing, but it's all he had. And he tunnel visioned down the barrel of the rifle. And instead of shooting the quail, he shot me 3 times. So the one time wasn't enough. But he shot me in the abdomen, the chest, and unfortunately both eyes. And what saved the vision in my right eye was I was wearing a pair of glasses, of sunglasses that slowed those pellets down. And I didn't really realize how hot and how fast and how strong those pellets were. The penetration into my chest almost killed me. I had to get life flighted to Macon, Georgia, which was the closest trauma center. They wanted to fly me to Emory, where there was good eye care there, great doctors, but they thought I would die on the way. So they got me to the nearest trauma center. From there, I went through quite a bit of surgery and just general pain. Got out of the hospital and ended up starting a journey that brought me here today. And part of that was being without vision at all, totally blind for about 3 months until they could operate further on the right eye. Then even after they finished that right eye, there was still a lot of glue on that eye from gluing the cornea back, which was in 3 pieces. And so the doctors told me, you know, hey, the glue's going to fall off. And we waited and we waited and we waited, and the glue fell off in the bad eye, the left eye, where they glued the cornea on that one, but it never fell off on the right eye. So they had to kind of scrape it off with a little scalpel. And then eventually I went through, I think, 10 pairs of glasses with really thick lenses, because every time a few weeks went by, my cornea changed and then I couldn't see again. So it was only after probably about a little over a year that they decided to try a hard contact lens, and they had to play with that quite a bit in order to get some vision back in my right eye. And so I did regain some usable vision in my right eye. It's pretty functional from where I was. And I'm very thankful to have that. I think the interesting part was going through all this with my family, and like Bob and Gary, I had a really good support network in my family. The other gentleman didn't say this, but I will. The stats show that when someone experiences a major disability event, a lot of times the partner they're with, their spouse, will leave them because they just can't get through working as a support person or caregiver for the other individual. So I have to really praise my wife for sticking with me. I will say one time early on, she let me go into a pet store by myself while she went in the grocery store. And I came out and there was no one there to pick me up for 30 minutes. So I was wondering if she was coming back, but she did.
She came back.
She came back.
Yeah, she came back.
Because he had the wallet, probably. That's probably what that was about.
Well, Charlene, at this point, you know, what I would like to make clear in my journey is, see, I didn't lose my vision. I lost my eyesight. See, my vision is sharp as a tack. And that's what allows me to continue on the journey. You know, you have to, at the end of the day, you have to know where you want to go. And you can go there with your eyes open, i.e. with sight, or with your eyes closed. Now, most people wouldn't choose to close their eyes, but if your eyes are closed, you have to determine that you're not going to stop your journey. And there are wonderful people out there to help, but you have to look for them. You know, just like if you needed, and you were talking about the question on the application about a driver's license. So if you needed a driver's license to get a job, you would go out and get a driver's license if you could. Well, if you needed eyesight to have a job, and there are no jobs with eyesight, then you have to create a job for you as a blind person. You know, some people would say it's like finding a needle in the haystack. Well, the reality is that people do find needles in haystacks, but you got to commit to being successful. And that's where your vision comes in. Now, for me, my vision was always on the prize. And my eyesight didn't have anything to do with that, because there were no roadmaps to lead me to where I was trying to get. I had a dream, and I went about putting together the pathway for that. And at no time was it based on something I saw. So, you know, we all have a sight of challenges, but we don't have to have a vision challenges, because we all dream of something. And we need to pursue our dreams and collect the components that you need to get there. Now, the people on this talk, they're all resources. Bill here in the state of Michigan, he's with the Blind Association. Gary with his consulting company, and Charlene, you with your counseling expertise. So this talk is going to be put up on someone's platform, and the attendees, they need to refer back, and they need to refer this or share this with as many people as they can. And this employment or this unemployment thing for the visually challenged, the pandemic has created an opportunity for blind people to be employed.
Amen. But
you know,
Bill, Bob, let me just say the
work.
following. I think that from my perspective, the key is this. Anything that just about that any other person can do in a business context, a blind person can do. Technology is fierce. Remote work is a reality. And like with anything else, you have to play to your strengths. I'm never going to be a great basketball player, but even when I could see, I wasn't a great basketball player. So I don't have to dream about being a basketball player. Right. Like you, Bob, I agree. Vision is critical. And the question is, the vision has to have an element of reality and an element of research on your part. The first thing I did when I went on disability is I went on the internet, I went to Mr. Google and I said, hey, what jobs do blind people do? What are the jobs? And it came back with, there's all kinds of jobs that blind people do. So there's a broad spectrum of things to do. Now, if you were a person in a previous life that was working in a hands-on kind of job, and that's what you did, hands-on, the reality of it is that is not accessible to you. But as long as the brain works, as long as you have vision, as long as you do research, and as long as you reach out to people that know things that maybe you do not know, it gives you the opportunity to be employed. There is an abundance. It's not needles in haystacks. There are an abundance of jobs that exist for people to do, but we have to get the connective tissue of the person in the companies that are offering the jobs. There are companies in the middle that do that. It's not just Vanward. There's a number of companies across the country. But hopefully one of or two of them are in this room. These are, but you have to avail yourself to those opportunities. That's what I would say.
Bill, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, so I think that's a great point that both Bob and Gary make. And Bob, I always like that when somebody brings up that you have to have a vision, you know, because even when you lose your eyesight, you still have to have that vision of what you're going to do in life. For me, you know, at a very high level in a corporate environment, losing my position was very difficult. In fact, I always tell people the worst day of my life was not having no eyesight, the worst day was when the senior HR person came out on a Monday morning with the chief executive officer of the company and said, we're not gonna bring you back. And why did they say that? Because they didn't really realize that I still could do the job. I would have to do it differently. I wouldn't be able to just travel immediately like I was traveling before, but I could get there if I had enough time and enough training. But unfortunately, they just were not a very disability friendly company. And I use that story really to talk to business about the fact that not only do you want to be disability friendly for acquiring new employees and new talent, but there's a number of people that could be key people in your employment right now that could have a disability event. In fact, we know 1 out of 3 individuals working age will have either a short-term or long-term disability event in their lifetime. And if you're not there, you could lose key talent. And so I didn't really feel sorry that much for the company. I felt sorry that they lost me because I was very talented. I had a lot to offer. And, so unfortunately, some other companies around that I knew viewed it the same way. So I decided to start my own business and was very successful in that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Amen.
I want to try and address one of the questions that one of the people who registered presents, and that is, how can sighted people help, and what are well-intended things that get in the way, that sighted people do that get in the way? And you can relate it to the workplace, or you can relate it to your personal experiences.
Well,
I can speak about people that get in the way. Just one of my motivations to get on with the things that I needed to do was when my father-in-law said, I could quit my job and just be here and help lead you around the house. And I was like, oh no, I'm good. I can get going. You can go home now. So that was a motivation, but it's not that unusual for a family member to feel like they have to overcompensate for you and actually be a crutch instead of somebody that would support you. And so it was really quite, satisfying, I think, for my father-in-law and for me to move forward. And I was happy he didn't have to quit his job.
Amen.
Thanks for that story. Bob, you were going to say something, and then Gary.
well, what I was going to say is that you have to consider the relationships that you have with people before you lose your eyesight. Because, see, everything is going to be exacerbated because the people are just fearful. I'm in the home healthcare business, and so I interact with people with one disability or another frequently, and when new employees come out, and someone comes into the shop and they have a disability where they need a crutch, in order to be able to walk around. Initially, see that a showroom, a person, they're apprehensive about helping them because they believe them to be fragile and something will happen to them based on their inability to help. And so as a blind person, see, part of my responsibility is to educate people that I come in contact with that, see, I don't need their pity. I need their help, and here's how they can help me. And most of the time, they can help me by simply treating me as I don't have the blind. So if I need them to, I went on a blind date, right? Now this is gold. And so the young lady, she was excited. And so when we're in, this was a couple a date, right? So as we sit down, and all restaurants, they move at the same pace. And so the young lady, she leans over to me after I point out to her that that I need her to, when the bread is delivered, I need her to just let me know that the bread is here, along with the oil and that, and I can get that by myself. So she says, well, see, I don't know what to do. I say, well, just close your eyes and just do what she would do with your eyes closed. And she said, oh, okay. And so the date didn't end up as a good date, but we were able to get further along in it simply by simple things. Well, if you need to know what to do to help me, just close your eyes.
Yeah.
Nice, Bob. Thank you. Gary?
Yeah, I kind of come at this in this way. As I said earlier, everybody has some disability. And I think what has been very helpful to me is I could come home even when I was sighted and say, honey, I signed a $250,000 contract. And she would say, okay, what else you got? Like there's a term called Black girl magic. And that would be my wife. When I lost my vision, she treated me exactly the same way that she has always treated me. Always. And that is the most important thing. Another thing that I don't know the two gentlemen pointed out, but I felt like this way. When I lost my vision, there was a group of people that were comfortable and there were a group of people that were uncomfortable, right? Now, as far as I'm concerned, I kind of drifted away from those people that are uncomfortable because that is in the way of what I'm attempting to achieve. And what I'm attempting to achieve is to be successful. And I'm hoping that we get into the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of how we get from that place to the place we are now, because that is really the deal. Having a vision, knowing what you want to accomplish, knowing who you need to reach out to, knowing who is of use to you in that goal and who is not of use to you in that goal. I'm a focused guy. Successful people are generally very focused. So I just, separated the wheat from the chaff. And I focused on those people that were moving me along that path or helping me or working with me on that path. For me, I don't like people putting their hands on me without asking, as any other person wouldn't. I don't want to be treated like a child because I don't happen to be a child. So if the best thing that people, well-meaning as they are, can be is to just ask, not act. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Jerry, there are some questions in the chat. Can you maybe ask a couple of the questions in the chat for our panelists?
Yes, the first question is, how do older blind people get jobs?
Well,
Okay.
I think I'm probably.
Oh, everybody wants to jump on that one.
Well, I think I'm probably the oldest person on there, right? So how an old person gets a job is the same way a young person would get a job. You first have to figure out what you want to do. And then can you do that? And if you can't, you gotta go looking for people that have that job. And I'm gonna share with you something that happened to me. In March of 2020, I had the virus. So I was in the hospital for 10 days. Well, when I came out, my administrators had shut the office down and they moved all the work remote. Now, and at the time, yeah, I thought that was an okay kind of proposition. Well, 2 years later, what I see is that for people that are low vision or blind, see, I believe is far more opportunities for them today if they can have the computer skills or the customer service skills that can happen remotely. So if they don't have those skills, they need to find a way to get those skills, and then they need to go after the job that they want in those settings. Now, I work from home, right? So in my house, I don't need my employer doesn't have to provide any special consideration for me because my home is already situated for me. And so I believe that the pandemic has created enormous opportunities
Absolutely.
for people that have low vision or other disabilities, simply because a bill had made a reference to when they determined not to bring him on or to continue his employment. One of the considerations was travel. Okay, travel, since 50% of all business travel is gone today. They're using the platform we're on, Zoom or private kind of video conference and things, right? So at the end of the day, that we're at a very unique place in the American commerce kind of thing, because there are far more opportunities for the disabled today than they've ever been. But on any journey, if you want to practice accounting, you're going to have to learn debits and credits. So if you want to work in customer service, a call center, that you can do that from your home. But you got to acquire the skill set for that, and then you have to go out and market yourself to people that are looking for those kind of employees.
Bob, I think, like I said, you're spot on, but let me throw a couple of other things in the mix here. Here's what it comes down to as far as I'm concerned. If you find yourself older, there are a list of things that you have done in your life. There are a list of things that you know. There are a list of things that you are experts at, right? Everyone that's worked in their lives have gained some experiences and some knowledge. Let's call that bag A. In bag B, let's call it bag C, there's the things that you want to be able to do. You must fill the gap between bag A and bag C. If you're older, you have a lot of experience, you have a lot of things to add. I would disagree a little bit with my colleague, Bob. I am a traveling consultant. I have clients in Atlanta, North Carolina. I get on a plane, I travel to the assignment, I get off the plane, and I go to the client. If you are looking for a job, if you are looking for a position, I'm still an energy consultant part-time. I still do it. I had to figure out how to do it. I had to get to the solution of the problem. And there are lots of things that you can do to travel. My wife drops me off, but I can take an Uber just as easily to the airport like any other American. There are tools to get through the airport to the plane. There are tools to get from the plane to an Uber and to the client. I have cane skills, thanks to the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons. The key here is when I lost my vision and I still wanted to work, I went to my counselor who was 100% straight with me about what the deal was. And what I love her for today, as Talitha heard, I hope she's in this room, she gave it to me straight. I went to her with a plan. I need JAWS training. I need cane training. I don't want to go to Kalamazoo. I'm a technologist. I know how to navigate the iPhone. I just need these little shoves and little pushes to keep me in the game. I went to my employer and my clients and I discussed with them how I solved problems. In other words, I know you're concerned about my travel. Don't be. I'll be at the gig. I'll be there on time. You're wondering how I navigate the building. Stop thinking about it. I have the skills to navigate the building, and I still have a brain. I use these technology tools like I'm a robot. I am smart. I'm good. I'm talented. If you have those things, I say this all the time, excellence trumps bias. Take advantage of the skills that you have. Apply those skills to the things you want to be. There's lots of ways to take transferable skills from one area to the other. Don't say I was an engineer on Monday, but now I want to be a fireman on Friday. That's not the choice. Look at the skills that you have as an engineer and think about how those things can be applied to other careers. And then everything that Bob says, I agree with. Then aggressively attack it. Go to your counselors, get the training, do the work. And to the extent that you do that, you will get yardage. That's what it's about. And that's what it's always about, whether you have vision or you don't have vision. It's always about that.
And this is
Thank
Bill
you.
Robinson speaking.
Yes.
So I will say thank you to Bob and Gary for excellent comments on this. I'm going to use, instead of older employees, more seasoned employees, those with experience. Any type of experience really in wisdom that you bring to the marketplace today is in high demand. There is a real gap between jobs open and employees ready to fill it. So there's a unique opportunity here, and really employers are starting to value seasoned employees much more than in the days where there were a lot of younger employees right behind due to the baby boom, ready to go and fill those jobs. The other thing I would say is there are a number of, if you have some computer skills, there are a number of online training programs now that are both free and lead to some great skills. There's Google offering some of those, Microsoft offers some, Citrix offers some, as well as Salesforce. So there's really a huge opportunity if you want to get back into the workplace.
Absolutely.
To borrow Bob and Gary's phrases, have a vision, be laser focused, and know what your strengths are, and build off of those.
Yeah, always build off of the strengths. And there's another piece, and I want to build a little bit more on what you said there, Bill, that the key here, as I said before, is having the answers. And if you are a more seasoned individual, then you got to lean into where you have that season. When I first lost my vision, I talked to Social Security. Within 3 months, I was doing advisory. Who was I doing advisory with? Those people that knew Gary Horton over my 40-year career, those people that I've counseled, those people that I have given information to and consulted with. They called me, and they never even mentioned blindness. My first client was an associate of mine to say, hey, I just want you to give me a consult on this project because you know the project, you know how these things unfold. I leaned into the things that I knew, and within 90 days, I was back in the saddle, getting on planes, flying all over the country, and doing my thing. That's my story, but everybody has their own story. I had a bag. You guys all will have a bag. And the deal is, get in that bag, figure out what those skills are that absolutely have nothing to do with the vision, it has to do with what's up here. And being able to articulate that with confidence will get you hired in an environment where no one's going to these jobs. They don't want the jobs. That is an opportunity for you. You don't have to have all 16 bullets on the resume, but you do have to have the vision, the enthusiasm, the passion, and the ability to solve the problems that they're thinking about. People hire people, myself included, that make me money. That's why I hire them. That's what capitalism is. And that is the way you should approach, anyone should approach these jobs. So I just wanted to put that in the mix.
There's a tip from the audience on this
Yes.
subject, if you'd care to hear it.
Yeah, why
Go
not?
ahead.
It's a conversation.
It says, please share with your audience that there is an increasing need for skilled accessibility user testers, especially for those proficient with JAWS and NVDA, and with the native screen readers on their mobile phones. Companies need this talent, and persons who are blind are better qualified for their non-disabled peers. Take serious training so you are proficient with your devices and with written and oral communication, and of course, the web content accessibility guidelines. But these jobs are real and are increasing.
Yeah, Vispero, I just saw that Vispero was looking for some people. The people that produce JAWS, the people that manufacture JAWS, they're looking for people. I just saw that just today.
Okay.
Yep,
Well,
great.
on the opposite end of the scale from this past question, the next question is, if you had teenage children and you want to support them as a parent to set a good vision for their future, what would you do to encourage them?
Oh, man, can I take that one?
That's a Gary Horton question all day long.
Okay, here's what it is. If you have a teenager that is visually impaired, the most important thing for you to do is to encourage them, support them in reading. Expand their view. Give them air. Take them places. And the places can all be in their room, but they must understand what the possibilities are. If you're in a room by yourself and you're not learning, if you're not reading, if you're not experiencing other things, that is the killer for all young people. For me personally, I will tell you, being someone with low vision and a little bit weird and quirky, I read voraciously. And what it did for an inner city kid from Detroit, I could be in France, I could be in Russia, I could be on Jupiter. It opened up the possibilities of what I could do with my life. That is the absolute best thing you can do with your young person. The blindness is part of who you are. You use that as a force multiplier. The reading gives you the intelligence, it gives you the information you need to make decisions. You must broaden your horizon. The broader you make your child's horizon, the more possibilities they'll see, the more examples they'll see. And like my wife, treat them like little humans. They will navigate it. We're humans. We find ways to solve problems. That is what you do with a teenager that you want to encourage. Of course, they're all teenagers, so I get that that's pretty difficult because teenagers in general are pretty hard to work with. But that is the key. The key is the reading, the information, whatever it is, get the information in their head. Don't close them out. Don't let them be closed, because that is the killer. They have to understand how the world works.
Absolutely. Bill, Bob, do you guys want to weigh on this? And thanks, Jerry. Those were some great questions and comments from the chat.
Well, what I think is that with all people, the sooner you can identify their passions,
yes,
and then coax them to become a proficient in their passion. So it doesn't matter if it's a teenager or a seasoned person. You got to be passionate about something, and the more passion that you can generate, you increase the opportunity of being a successful. That's cited or not.
Agreed.
So,
but the reading, but you got to have the experiences to find the passion. That's my point.
But that's what, that's what. See, all children come with a parent of some type, right? And that's the role of the adult in a child's life, is to expose them to things so they can figure what they're passionate about. Everyone knows Stevie Wonder. So Stevie Wonder has been blind all his life, and he's probably the most prolific songwriter in the history of songwriting, right? But early on, singing in church, he figured that's what he wanted to do. And so his family, who they were not with him being blind, but they were with him singing because he could get away from them. And so they supported that. And so here you have probably one of the greatest music people of all time. And everything that I do, like I was explaining that I'm pursuing this virtual fitness program, right? And I'm passionate about it because when I came out of the hospital with the virus, I had the brain fog, I had a fatigue and these things. And I met a fitness trainer who helped me with that. And she came by my house to train. So I'm like, well, hell, I'm not the only one with a fatigue problem. I'm not the only one that's not using a fitness to be healthier. I said, well, how can I deliver this to individuals' homes? Now, I'm still blind, and this is truly the internet is a visual place. But at the end of the day, because of my passion of the fitness and believe I can help other people, off I go. And that's what it comes down to. You have to be passionate about it. The young people, help them find their passion. Older people, you might have to reach to your children to figure out what can you be passionate about that's relative of today. And then you get to make a decision. See, the seasoned people, they're better at making a decision. You can decide what you can't be passionate about, or you can decide something you can't be passionate about. And once you figure the passion out, then reach out to programs like what Bill has, people like Charlene, the non-profit that's over this whole thing. Reach out to them, and they're going to have resources to help you get there. Because your journey is unique. My journey is unique from Gary's journey, and Gary's journey is unique from Bill's journey. But I'm the journey. We're contributing to everyone else, which is about.
Thank you. Bill?
If I could comment too. So I appreciate Bob mentioning that reaching out to the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons would be a good start to supporting that teenager and helping them, as well as making sure that you're taking advantage of everything the school has to offer through the teacher counselor for visually impaired, who is there to help your student. But I would like to offer this. As your students learning from that TCVI, or maybe they're getting some instruction from one of our field teachers, or getting some counseling and guidance from a counselor, set them up with some high expectations, but also set them up to be successful and build off of some small things too. So one of the things I really liked about an admiral in the Navy that gave a speech down in Texas at a graduation was, he said he liked to start his day every day making his bed. And that's what he taught all his recruits, all his kids to do. Why? Because if you can do that, that's one successful thing that you start your day with. You make your bed. So if that individual that is, a teenager is relying on mommy or daddy to make their bed, well, you're taking an opportunity away from that person to actually experience the joy of completing a task to start their day, as well as the opportunity to show that they can actually do something and build off of that. The other thing is, when you look at what's the number one transferable skill out there, it's going from that first job to the next job. So in order to do that, kids need to have a job, and they need to have some work experiences along the way. And that's what really our job is to make sure that those students have opportunities for work and that they have opportunities to get prepared for work, because that will show the ability in the future when they get through high school or college or wherever their endpoint is to start looking for employment. That's going to show the employer that they have a transferable skill, whether it was bagging groceries, doing a cash register, working in a warehouse, working in an office. It doesn't matter what kind of work it is, all those skills are transferable. And just to show you that they are, I took a part-time consulting gig in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and there was a plumbing company going bankrupt. I know nothing about plumbing, but in 3 months I had them with cash in the bank and most of their debts paid off.
Absolutely. That's it. Amen. Be excellent.
Yeah.
Lean into your skill set. And listen, let's be clear. There are programs, at least in Michigan, and I'm sure in other states, that are specifically financed and designed for young people to get these work experiences. And I think, I'm proud to say this, working in conjunction with the Bureau, we're crafting innovative programs that do give these young people the work experience. I call it the inside-outside game. Self-advocacy and self-assessment on the inside, real money-making, real corporate-like jobs on the outside. Because when a person has a corporate internship, no matter what their background is, their ability to get that first job out of college goes up exponentially. If you start that conversation in high school, it bleeds into college. And like Bill, just to bring it all home, like Bob said, it starts with finding your cheese. What is that thing that turns you on? For me, it was computers. For others, it will be music. But you gotta find that cheese, because once you find that cheese and you get that endorphin rush, that will propel you to achieve. That is so critical. That's what you, and listen, I have 4 sons and I've not been super successful with all of them. So teenagers are hard in general. So I get that, but they usually listen and they learn.
We have a couple of additional comments from the gallery.
Yep.
We have some advice to prepare teenagers for life after you're gone. And then the second piece of advice is to become very proficient with Zoom and know how to navigate it and interact with Zoom and your screen reader, and keeping your screen reader from reading into the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. And I really like Shawnee's comment, and she's agreeing with you guys, saying prepare your children to live independently after the parents are gone. And then Alicia is saying the more experiences you have as a person who's blind as a teenager, the more you feel like you can do anything. So everybody's really weighing in on this.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true.
So someone asked a question about how do you find a job after being out of work? And so as you speak to your own personal experiences, how long did it take you to get back to the top of your game?
For me, as I mentioned before, I started doing advisory within 90 days of losing my vision totally. And I had a very similar experience as Bill did. That is to say, when the company saw me losing my vision, even though I was a high performing individual, made them a lot of money, I would suggest, they said, well, you know, we're kind of changing directions and you're not in it. So they gave me a nice, you know, a severance package. I knew I had some time with the severance package, but from that day, 90 days hence, I was doing advisory on a part-time basis. Within a year, I was doing full-time project management, just the way I had always done in my career. And in 3 years, I started to envision Vanward Consulting Services in the public sector space to provide opportunities for young people. And that has been one heck of a roller coaster ride, and I've enjoyed every second of it. So 90 days from blindness to actually being employed.
Bob or Bill, you want to weigh in?
Well, I'm not a good example for jobs because every job I've ever had, I created it myself.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so I grew up on welfare, right? So I was determined that I was not going to be a welfare recipient. And as a young Black man in Detroit who stuttered real bad, you know, in interviews, I didn't do well. So I decided I need to create my own job. And so, and over my career, I've created probably 1,000 jobs for other people. And back in October, I created another job, but for me, with the virtual fitness company, you found me? So I'm not a good candidate to talk about jobs because I create on my own.
Excellent, thank you. Bill?
Yes, thank you. So this is Bill Robinson speaking again. For me, I was kind of like Gary. My company triggered a severance package. I wasn't really sure at that point what I was going to do. I embraced all my VRTs, teaching, and tried to take advantage of every consultant she sent my way. So I was learning at that point skills. And skills I knew I would need. And so I was fortunate to have some time to do that and some support to be able to do it. In the meantime, I always wanted to work in trade stocks. So I started day trading a little bit. I found out I needed to look at my screen reader very carefully because at one point I placed a trade for 1 million shares of Google, which I think was about $100 million. And my broker called and said, we had to cancel that order for you. And I said, oh, thank God. So anyway, you kind of learn some things along the way. I ended up enjoying that so much. I got my Series 7 license. So I went through a period of online study and actually went to the place to actually take the test and passed it. And then I associated myself with a broker and started managing other people's money. Much more carefully, by the way, than I manage my own.
Exactly.
And I learned a lot from that experience, even with using some of my own money in the stock market. And that was that if you truly believe in something, you have to take some of the emotion out of it. And that's the only way to be successful. If you look at the worst stock traders, they sell on emotion. So they sell at absolutely the wrong time and they buy at absolutely the wrong time. So that was a good experience. From there, I ended up working in getting into business consulting. So I actually ended up with, I say I was probably the most licensed person in Chattanooga, Tennessee, because I wanted to kind of be full service. So I had my mortgage broker license so I could help people get home loans. I had my property and casualty license so I could evaluate homeowners policies, car insurance policies. I had my life, health, and insurance and annuity insurance license so I could sell health, life, and annuities. And then I ended up having a CPA license that I kept. I got a real estate license so I could sell businesses for people. So I kind of did a bunch of things and settled on really business consulting, managing money, and then doing some CPA work. So for me, it took being in a new town with no clients and really no network. It took me probably a full 3 years to really get established in those areas in a brand new town.
Can I throw something at the tail end of that, Bill?
Sure.
For those in the audience that are trying to figure out, well, how do I get back from that work? There are lots of resources. Bob mentioned them before, but there are staffing firms that are dedicated to sourcing individuals with disabilities and connecting them with jobs that they might be available to work. You can still use the usual job networks that are out there, LinkedIn and all the rest, Indeed and all those other ones. But the best thing that you can do is what both these gentlemen just said, and myself, work the network of people that you know. That's number one. Develop the skills that you require, number two, but find the firms to represent you that understand how to sell your skill to an employer. And that's a missing link that many people do not avail themselves of. But I will tell you, over my research over the last year or so in this space, there are several companies that have that business model. And I'm hoping that if you guys are comfortable with this, we'll probably do a blast email with some of these resources that you guys can reach out to for employment. I just had one of my customers just got an offer today from working that very network. So there are opportunities. We're all self-made guys with money in the bank, but that's not everybody. Bank tellers lose their vision as well. And that there are options that do exist that you can avail yourselves of. And as I say, we'll either host it on Pieces of Me. Sorry, Daniel, I'm putting this out there, or we'll just send a blast email to the participants. So I hope we have all of your emails addresses.
Yep, and I'll add one more thing to what Gary said too. And I'm sure Bob's going to agree with this as well. When you start a business, there's a lot of sacrifice. And when to maintain a business, self-employed person, there's a lot of long hours, weekend work that goes into that. You're always marketing yourself. You're always networking. You're always looking for, if you have employees, which I did at one point, you're always looking for that next great employee. It really never ends, but you have to be wired a certain way to do that. And I think, when you listen to Bob and where he was in life, he had a vision and he knew where he wanted to go, but he knew he couldn't get there without a lot of sacrifice. So I don't want to discourage someone from starting their own business, but I do want to say that it's very difficult and it's hard, but it can be very, very rewarding.
100%. Amen. 100%. I agree with that.
But I would like to just chime in here, guys, life is hard. So at the end of the day, and that's why you got to have a passion for something. But, this journey with eyesight, without eyesight, with legs at work, without legs at work, it's hard. And so just, be passionate, find your passion. Accumulate the tools that you're going to need, and then get busy.
Thank you. Jerry, you were going to present something from the chat?
Yes, there
Thank you,
are two questions in the chat that sort of dovetail into this subject. And the first one is, are businesses more receptive to hiring blind people these days? And then the second one is there support for businesses that are open to working with the visually impaired? How would a company that is open find visually impaired people that have skills to do the job.
Oh, man, fantastic. You want to take a shot, Bill, first?
Yeah, let me go first and I'll let you guys chime in. So on the first question, I think it was about our businesses open to hiring blind persons. Businesses are open to hiring people who can do the essential duties of the job. So what they need to know is, first and foremost, can the person fulfill the position and the duties associated with that? Are they more open? I would say there are some that are very open, like in Detroit. We've had the good fortune of working with Amazon, and we've had 5 placements with Amazon so far this year. So Amazon is open. Sometimes when you get into a smaller business, they don't have the HR department that's looking for diversity. They don't have the support network to do the computer programming that may be necessary to script with JAWS. So they're a little more hesitant, or they may not have the ability to understand how to do that. And that's where, our clients are not only individuals that have lost sight or are blind, but our clients are also business. And I know Shawnice, who's on this call, I remember her saying she was working with helping an HR director with a question about some blindness issues. And lo and behold, that person was HR over a North American division, and they learned so much. And so, that's how you open the doors, as you become that ambassador or that evangelist to go out and touch these businesses. And then is the second question, if you remind me, Jerry, I think it was something to do with how to help businesses. Is that right?
It was regarding
Resources that businesses could employ.
Yeah.
yes,
So-
support that businesses can receive.
Right. So resources that businesses can look to, there are a couple things that are easy to find, like the Job Accommodation Network, or what we call JAN for short. It's an online resource for businesses, and it will help employers look and see what kind of accommodations are customary for different types of jobs and disabilities. And something that I just learned recently on the Job Accommodation Network was that now, instead of a generic ability to go in there and look, both in job seekers, employees, and employers can go in and customize an account just for them, to allow them to have unique accommodation tools and resources flow into their account. So that's pretty exciting. The other thing is, and this is a story I'll tell you in Lansing, we had a customer that was looking at a call center, and it's a national call center. They've got offices everywhere. And they went in for the interview. They passed every test, like at the highest percentile, and they didn't get hired. And so we followed up with them and asked, what's going on? Why didn't you hire? And it turns out that the last part of the test was that they had to give the job candidate a card, and they were supposed to read the card like they were interacting with a customer. Well, because this interviewer didn't know how to work with a blind person, and because the interviewee had not asked for accommodation on the front end, they really didn't know what to do with that card. So they just skipped that. And that was like the most important part. So we went in and sat down with the employer, myself, the manager, the counselor, one of our great field teachers that was high-tech oriented. And we sat down with their whole management team and spent about 2.5 hours talking about the necessary accommodations that were missed in that interview, how they could bring that person back and re-interview them. We looked at their software to see if there was any issues with scripting or JAWS. We also helped them understand what they might want to do on the, in terms of either some job coaching that we would be happy to provide, or some on-the-job training. So it's that kind of thing that I get real excited about, because it's helping an employer that was not friendly to become friendly.
Thank you, Phil. I just want to say before you say something, Jerry, that Karen has already cited askjan.org in the chat. For whomever asked that question, you can grab that resource out of the chat.
And there's another one too. And I think if Cantrice Moffitt is in the room, please, let's talk about InTech. That's Mississippi State has a number of resources for employers to understand what they should do, what they should not do, some of the issues of blindness. There's videos and lots of information. There's also the IRS has a tax credit for those companies that do, small businesses that do hire those with disabilities, is another option for businesses to learn more about what their rights are, how they should structure these jobs. But again, as an employee that's looking for a job, what's missing, what should be more prevalent, let's say, is the staffing model. Having ombudsmen that engage the businesses about the rules and not the rules, but the understanding blindness and what blind people can do. There's a lot of ignorance on the part of the businesses. I will call out DTE that Jerry Norcia put out a post on LinkedIn where he talked about, hiring, bringing in a co-op that is visually impaired, and that, he had not understood the technology that eliminates the barriers of an individual being effective within the business context. And sometimes it requires in the staffing model to say, hey, this is what you're asking for. Let's look at the essential job. What is the requirement? What needs to be done? Oftentimes it's not exactly what they put on paper. Then you introduce that person that can do that job to the company to make something happen. There should be more individuals with all disabilities that should avail themselves of business staffing organizations, because we know how to shape those jobs, how to communicate to these businesses to give the candidate a better opportunity for success in that job space. So I'm hoping that Cantrice can throw a Mississippi State link in the chat if she's available. Otherwise, we will have to make that available after the meeting. They're an excellent resource. I use them quite frequently.
Thank you. Jerry, there is a question in the chat where James Evans is looking for a resource in terms of some training. And so, yeah, I was typing a reply to James, but you have any other questions? James, I'll address your question through a resource. Jerry, are there any other questions that you want to pull from the chat?
There is one that says, if you could do one thing differently in your career, what would it be, and why would you do this thing differently?
I'm going to take that really quickly. As I look back over the course and what happened with my blindness, if I could go back and whisper in my ear, I would go back to 2013 when my sight began to slide, and I would say, stop by JAWS, learn your cane skills. Even if you even if you can still see, learn these skills. Learn how to be multilingual. Learn your blind skills early so the transition is less toxic. It's less of a hindrance. I'm a fast learner. I'm a very focused individual, but I think I could have moved faster. There might not have been any step. I might have been able to stay with the business I was at, and because I would have solutions to the problems, right? And I think if I could go back, that would be the thing. I agree that every job that you have, and this is a good thing, this is a thing I pat myself on the back about. Every job you ever work, every single one, you value that job in two components. Component A, the money that they're paying you. Component B, what can you learn beyond just the job? Because that knowledge that you gain is power in the next job. Is filling up that bag I keep referring to. I had lots of things to pick from because I had worked in multiple industries. So that is the thing that I did well, right? But the thing that I didn't do well is when I really got the call signal that my vision was going to start to really drop off a cliff. I should have been preparing myself like I've done in all the other factions of my life and started to get that training earlier. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Bob or Bill?
Well, see, I'm one of these kind of guys. I don't spend time in the past. So I don't, I'm looking, what can I do to move forward? Because that's where my vision is. I'm not looking in the rearview mirror. Whatever that part of the journey was, obviously it was valuable and I maximized it to the extent that I could. But I'm looking forward, and I would advise of people that I speak with or that I mentor, keep your eyes on the prize, what you're passionate about.
Okay. Bill?
Well, I like Bob's answer, and that's kind of the way I think, like that Italian Formula One driver that says, what's behind me is not important, as he speeds down the raceway. But I will say this, that I really did not know anything about vocational rehabilitation, and no one told me about that. And I think the toughest response I got from one of my doctors about 3 months into my accident, and I really, at that point, I still did not have any usable vision in either eye. And I remember to this day, and this is why I'm going to say this, because you cannot depend on other people to create the vision for you. But he told me, in no mixed words, he said, get used to being disabled. You need to file for disability. You're going to sit at home for the rest of your life.
Goodness gracious.
And it crushed me. I was very positive always, and I never had somebody tell me something like that before. And so I responded by firing the doctor and finding a different doctor to go to, not because a different doctor could heal me or fix me or do anything different, but because, and Gary said this earlier, I wanted to surround myself with positive people that would support my vision for the future and in my own view of where I was headed, and not somebody that would tear me down or demean me as a human being. And I think that would be something that I would, leave everybody with is, if you run into that really would be my advice, is to find somebody else to work
let
with.
those people drop off.
Mm.
You gotta let, but I'm gonna push back on my two learning colleagues here and say, analysis is important in defining those steps, right? I'm a continuous improvement guy. So you have to look at what happened before, understand how to refine it to be nimble to move forward. That's what I would say. The past is prologue. Past is important. People make the same mistakes over and over and over again. So without some analysis of what came before, you're not so wise. You may not be as wise in what's coming ahead, because you can't really find that light until you analyze what it is that you know you don't want to do. That's all. That's all the way I would put it.
No, it's
Thank
good
you.
advice.
There's
Yeah.
one last question in the box. Someone with skills in education is wondering how they can get to the first interview.
Send me your resume. No, you
That
get
was
to the
easy.
first interview by a resume that speaks to what the requirement is. That's how you get to the first interview. You get to the first interview by doing the preparation work. And you have to go the extra mile. You have to go the extra mile and not take no for an answer. I mean, if you're educated and if you're knowledgeable, do you know about the company? Do you know how much money they make? Did you look at the 10K? Do you know who the hiring manager might be? Do you know what he's posting on LinkedIn? Do you know what he thinks, feels, and breathes? If you want to be successful, you must prepare. You must do the research. It's not just about what's on your resume. It's not just about what you know if they don't know that you know, right? So for me, I have seldom not gotten a job that I've interviewed for, and it is because I approach it with aggression in planning. I think about what I'm trying to accomplish, and I focus on accomplishing that objective. That's how you get to the first interview, right? You look at that job description, and if, as I say, and I keep saying this, if there's 16 bullets on it and you have 12, have an answer for the 4 that you don't know. Don't ignore them. Have an answer, and put that in your cover letter. That's how you get the call. Let them feel the passion through your words. Do the research on LinkedIn. It's a powerful tool that we didn't have 20 years ago, but I'm telling you, that tool turns heads. But be mindful about it. Don't be ridiculous about it. Don't talk about politics and other BS that doesn't matter. Be about the business. If you go on LinkedIn, you type in Gary E. Horton, you're going to hear a lot about blindness and employment, because that's what I'm about. That's what I'm focused on. And when people see that you're focused on something like that, they'll give you a look, 100%, especially because you can't find employees now. I cannot be more powerful on this point. Don't flunk yourself from opportunities that you believe you can do. Don't ever do that. Give yourself a chance and be aggressive and confident. And when you get the job, deliver the results, because then they'll fire you if you don't. It's just that simple.
Thank you. Anyone want to weigh in?
This is Bill speaking again, just to echo a little bit of what Gary said. When he said be aggressive, one way that you can be aggressive is to not only have that resume, but like he said, draft a really good cover letter that takes your resume and takes the strengths off your resume. Or if you haven't worked recently, then show some learning off your resume, or put some learning that you've recently completed, whether it was training, online courses, volunteer work, anything, and then speak to your strengths in the cover letter. If you can get past the electronic screening tool that we all have to deal with right nowadays. So you got to submit these job applications online, and you got to put a resume and a cover letter in there. If you can find out who the hiring manager is, like Gary said, do a little research, or find out at least, a generic hiring HR person. Send your resume ahead of time with a cover letter to that individual, and tell them how interested you are in the position, and why you are a good match for that company. because the company wants somebody with a cultural fit as well as somebody that's really excited to work there. There's nothing more, I guess, prominent or that speaks more to some candidate that would turn me off as to somebody that comes into the interview and says something like, yeah, so what's your experience working at MRS? Or they don't even know who they're interviewing for, or they say something about the Bureau that it's obvious they hadn't researched it, or they're not excited about the interview. I want somebody that's excited, because if I can see that they're excited in the interview, then I know that they're going to go in the job and give it 110%.
I got another trick on that electronic hurdle. Here's the trick on the electronic hurdle. If the position, whatever the position might be, whatever the name of that position would be, I would go onto LinkedIn. I would type that job description, not the job description, but that title in the search box. I would look at the profiles of individuals that have worked a fair amount of time in those areas. And I would look at the nomenclature, buzzwords on those profiles, and I would put those buzzwords in my resume. If you're going to try to surmount the electronic chasm, that is one way of doing it. But I say, as those people that are visually impaired, there are a number of companies that know how to talk to the employers that are committed to hiring those with impairment. Work with them first. Be focused. I work with the companies that are talking to blind people. That's where I have to start. That's going to make it easier to achieve, or at the very least, practice my resume, practice my interviewing, even if I don't ultimately want that job, as opposed to going to the big world of Monster and all the rest and ending up in that churn. Those are things that I would think about. But if you want to be in the churn, be purposeful about it. Go on LinkedIn. It's 8 million people on LinkedIn, I think. Go more than 8 million. Go on LinkedIn and just put it, project manager. Find those 10-year, 15-year project managers. What do they have? Oh, there's agile, there's hybrid. Use that nomenclature, that terminology, and that may get you beyond the electronic chasm.
All right, Gary. So what'd you tell the students last Friday afternoon
100%.
about?
You know my phrase.
I know.
That's what, but he was talking about the resume, but in to me, there's 5 things, artifacts that are important. It's your resume, it's your cover letter, it's your elevator speech when you meet somebody and being able to articulate who you are and what you are, right? It's your social media profile, and it's your interview. When all those things tell the same story, your possibility of being hired goes way up, right? And bias exists, is everywhere. Everybody has bias. I have bias, Bill has bias, Bob has bias, you have bias. Some people know about their bias, some people recognize they have it, others don't. Here's the thing. Excellence trumps bias. Excellence, perfect resume, well-dressed, no joke, do the homework, be the better guy. You will get more hits. You can't just fluff it. You can't just shuffle into it. You have to be excellent. People want individuals that are going to come into their places and make them more money, or make them more efficient, or do more with enthusiasm and passion. If you can gather those things, your ability of being hired goes up exponentially, especially in this environment.
There were 2 people who sent in questions about stating, I don't want an entry-level job. I have too much experience. I want to hit those high-level jobs. And so what you all were speaking to definitely addresses those questions. Bob, is there anything that you wanted to say?
Oh no, listen. I am learning because you know I've only looked for one job in my life. All the other jobs I've had, I've created them. But this is all good information. And this should
Would you hire me, Bob?
Pardon me?
Would you hire me?
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, see, everyone wants someone that can come in and set their organization on fire. So if you don't have enthusiasm about the position, if you don't have expertise, why does anyone forget the disabilities that you have? You haven't exhibited the abilities people are looking for. See, I'm not looking for someone just to fill a position. We're well beyond that today. We need people. Every employer needs to get the best candidate for their job. And they're looking for them to outperform everyone else who's ever had the job. Like you hear Gary talking about the money in the bank and all that. Well, the harsh reality, the only way for you to get more money is you have to take people that are more productive. So if they can't set the place on fire, why would you want them? You know, so.
Exactly.
Awesome. Jerry, there's a question. There's a statement from Ann at Random. You want to read that?
Anne says to feel free to reach out to her, Anne with an E, at Rangam, RANGAM.com. She works with Source Abled, and they work to connect individuals in a disability population to great Fortune 1000 companies to help them get that interview, job, and maintain the job in a supportive, inclusive environment. Check us out at sourceabled.com.
Can you put that, oh, she put it in the chat?
It's to
She did.
everyone.
The
Yes.
link? Okay,
Yes.
fantastic.
Okay.
And I
Yes.
urge you guys to reach out. In other organizations, there are Disabled Persons is another organization that I checked out that's pretty good. And there are a couple of others. And Jerry, if you don't mind, can you throw my email in the chat? If those that want
certainly will.
information, they can just email me directly and I'll get some of that information out to you.
This isn't a question, but I think that it's worth tossing over to you, Gary, because the UK is 5 or 6 hours ahead of us, and we do have a caller on from the UK. They've hung on with us, and I think you might like to hear this. This is from Joe, and it says, I always knew you were going to lose your sight. I'm so proud to see you as you are today. You continue to be an inspiration to everyone, even us with perfect sight. You challenge our vision.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, man. I love you too, brother. I love you too. I'm going to get over on the other side. I'm going to get over there to see you. I would love to see you. Well, at least feel your bald head.
There's some great connection through the chat. So you all be sure to look at the chat. Shanice did a shout out and says, finding a job is your job until you find a job.
That's exactly right, Charlene. That's exactly right. How are we doing
So-
on time, Charlene?
We have about 10 more minutes, and then
Oh,
I'm going to turn
goodness.
it over to Daniel. So we're looking really good. I just wanted to throw out this question because you all are accomplished men, but someone said, well, what do you do for transportation? That's a big issue for me. So how do you all handle your day-to-day needs in terms of networking and transportation?
I'll take this one. I have a driver.
Well, that helps. Here's what I would say. I would say, here's the thing. I work a lot at home, okay? And I am trying to, I think people, if they want luxury, they have to make the money, right? So the idea of traveling for me is not a big deal because I make enough money to call Lyft whenever I want to call Lyft. But there are lots of transportation options, but those options will really encourage you to try to make more money. My focus, and this is what I would suggest to anyone that has travel problems, Focus on virtual work first. Gain experience to move to the next level. You cannot go from 0 to 100 in one jump. It's impossible. Maybe Bob can do it, but he's Superman. I ain't
No,
Superman.
trust me, my jump wasn't in one jump. I had a lot of small.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, thank you. I was hoping you would say that. So the thing is, you have to plan it. For me, I don't have to worry about cars. I don't have to worry about being taken around because I do my work virtually. That's the key. Now, if you want travel, you have to have the type of job that lets you get the kind of luxury travel that you want. Otherwise, it's going to be the bus, it's going to be the pair service, it's going to be trains if you're not in Michigan. I know there's some people that are not here in Michigan. I think it all comes down to what you want to do and what you're willing to do. Me, I needed to make enough money so I could go where I wanted to go when I wanted to go there and not plan it with the pair services. It's all about what you want and what you're willing to do to get it. I'm sure that's not as satisfying an answer, but it is absolutely true.
Right.
Awesome. Anyone else want to weigh in? No?
I use a driver. I'm fortunate that my wife drives me. When she's not available, I use Lyft or Uber. You know, one thing I'm disappointed in is that a lot of bus lines are not that convenient.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the problem.
Okay. Someone asked, how do you deal with the hesitations and the concerns and the fears of hiring a blind person from a company perspective? And I know that you gave a resource earlier, Bill, but does anyone else want to weigh in on, from a company's perspective, how to kind of deal with some of those strongholds within the companies?
I think I gave the answer before. I think you have to go into an interview and when you're engaging with the company with confidence, and you have to do your homework and have solutions, have answers. You know, I manage people in my business and I'm really, really hard on them when they identify a problem, but they haven't even thought through the possibility of a solution, right? I think people have a lot more respect for you when you have anticipated what their concern is and you try to address it in how you communicate. That's what I think.
Thank you. If no one else wants to weigh in, I'm going to turn it to you, Jerry. Looks like Sam Collins put a quick message or a quick question in the chat.
Sam Collins from the VSBP says, what advice do you have for the rehab professionals, if any, that work with BVI youth and adults in gaining independence and work?
My guess is that youth like money, and money is a great motivator. And when you can construct the type of programs or introduce them to the type of companies that want to lean into offering them pay to get that experience, that will spur them into engaging, right? So I think, Sam, the Lean In program that we're doing is just amazing that a lot of these young people have never had any work experience at all, but they are interviewing with major companies because what drove them through this 10-month program, what kept them going through the program was the gold at the end of the rainbow. I can be employed. I'm not going to mention any names here, but we have some great, great young people that talk to Charlene and I when we interview them, asking us, I just want to know what work is like. I want to be employed. And what I said to them is, then if you're willing to do the work, if you're willing to commit yourself, and if it's what you really want as your cheese, we will make it happen. I think that's the way you encourage young people. And the young high school students that look up to the college students, when they see the college students behaving that way, they will begin to behave that way. That's my belief. I believe that. I say it with confidence because I believe it and I see it happening.
Bill, did you want to weigh in, or Bob?
I don't
I
have anything
I
to
can
add to
weigh
that.
in, but I'd love to hear your thoughts first, Bob.
Oh, no, I don't, Gary's absolutely right. See, the work is what is the most important thing. You know, the only place where uh, a success precedes work is in the dictionary. Everywhere else, you got to have a plan. You got to work, guys. It comes back to the passion thing, right? That you have to put the work in. And if you put the work in, if the objective is to get a paycheck, you have to put the work in preparing yourself where someone will exchange a paycheck for your effort.
100%.
So, you know, so no, this isn't a complicated process, but I think that what happens with us, like Bill, when the guy told you, you need to file for disability and go home and sit down. I lost my eyesight 7 years ago, right? And I qualified for all kind of social benefits. And I haven't leaned on any of those. And it's because, see, I have a disability, but I am not disabled. I'm blind. I can contribute not only to the industry that I've been in for 40 years, I can also contribute to this new industry that I've been in now for 5 months. You found me? So, and that's what it is.
Man, oh man, I know we're running the clock out, Bob, and we'll probably have this offline, but I would say the following. As an entrepreneur, as a person that's navigating it, you take advantage of every angle that you can take advantage of.
Well, that's
you avail yourself of you avail yourself of these resources. That's what they're there for. You don't live off of the resources, but you should avail yourself of those resources. 100%.
Yeah, I got you. And that's your philosophy. I don't share that.
I hear you, brother. That's why it's a conversation.
All right. At the end of the day, it's what are you willing to do in exchange for the money that you're looking for?
Yeah, I agree.
So that's my position. So see, my position, I don't want anyone putting shackles on the money that I get. I do not apologize for being successful and paid.
And you shouldn't.
So
you shouldn't.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to say thank you to all the panelists. You all brought the real game and you told your truth and very, very powerful advice. There's a lot of action in the chat that supports that. Bob, you have a business proposition from James Evans. He would like to connect with you. So we'll be sure and pass you James Evans information. Jerry, is there anything before we transfer it to Daniel that you want to catch in the chat?
Alicia Betancourt recommends connecting with a benefits counselor if you're afraid of what may happen with your benefits. And Yolanda Riley wanted to say that she works with Gary for job preparation. He's very encouraging and motivating, and she received a job offer yesterday and accepted the offer. She said, everything he said to do in a job search, I did and got the job I wanted.
All right. A lot of kudos to you guys are online. People are just saying, well done, inspiring, and thank you. And so this is about moving that ball forward for employment. Any last comments before I turn it over to Daniel?
One last comment on the last question from Sam, and I'll just go back to what Gary said with Talitha. Set high expectations, but be honest with your customer. And I do like the benefits counseling and guidance post in there. I think that's important because we just had a individual that's never worked since I think they were working 2 or 3 hours a week. And with benefits counseling, we showed them where they could work almost 25 hours a week without losing benefits. The reason that is important is you're maximizing your income. It may lead to full-time work eventually, but we understand sometimes there are steps that people have to take. For young people, I would just say there's a lot of apprehension, and even for someone who isn't blind to take that first job. I remember still going to bag groceries for Winn-Dixie when I was 16 years old and was able to work, and I wasn't sure what the world of work looked like, and it's a lot of fun, but you have to get your feet wet first. So I appreciate like people like Gary who's working with us. I appreciate our other employer connections that we have that allow young people to have opportunities, because ultimately it is going to be the young people that are going to have to pay for our Social Security one day. So
100%.
we want to make sure everyone's employed.
Audio now on.
Yeah, there's a joke in chat. Thank you, Billy. Joe is saying, you know what, for the record, I didn't even want to hire Gary. He was forced on me. And I was totally wrong. So that's a good way to end this. You just never know the impact in the long game. So thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to turn it over to Daniel. Daniel?
Well, I want to thank our friends over at Vanward Consulting for putting this on. I want to thank our panelists for a great discussion. And I want to thank our friends at Interpreter Now for providing the ASL interpretation so that we can make this an accessible event that is very important to us. My friends, this is what Pieces of Me is all about. Real conversations, real answers, real ideas that move the needle forward. If you want to continue this conversation and others like it, come back next month. Check out the panel that Christy's going to be putting on for Live Difference. Join us on social media. Join our Facebook group. We're having some conversations start up there. This is what this is all about, exchanging ideas, raising the level of awareness. Regardless of where you come from or what you've been through, you have something valuable to contribute, and we want you to be part of this community. I, like so many of you, was told all the things I couldn't do. I was told by some vision specialists when I was a teenager, all I'd ever be able to do is take care. I wasn't supposed to go to law school. I wasn't supposed to start a nonprofit for sure. And I'm here to tell you, we have just gotten started with the impact we're going to make. So come be part of this community. Let's make some awesome things happen. And with that, I will wish everyone a good night.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.